Good morning or afternoon, everyone. My name is Mariela Salinas, and I am a marketing specialist here at Educate 360. Welcome to today's webinar, IIBA Certification Chat Q&A sessions presented by our fantastic instructor, Susan Heidorn. We are using Zoom for today's session, and we will be sharing a copy of this recording with you in an email after the webinar. We do encourage participation throughout the webinar, so please use that chat or that Q&A option for our short Q&A portion after the presentation. Educate 360 is so excited to present this webinar today. I will now hand it over to you.
Thank you so very much. You're always so sweet on those introductions. So let's take a look at some IIBA certification that we have. Also, if you have any questions, as Lorelia said, is throw them in the chat. So the next, in case you missed this one, or you know somebody who's interested, May 3rd is our next session. We have certification classes that can be both offered virtually and live with an instructor and at your own pace. So we've got all kinds of options. Also, very important, we have a 30% off bundle. Educate 360 offers a 30% off certification exam and application fees, which is always nice because they're not the cheapest thing, and a 1-year membership bundle for anyone who takes a Watermark Learning prep class. So just want to let you be aware of that. Also, if you are a member, maybe you will be taking advantage of our bundle, but check out the latest 2023 Global State of Business Analysis Report. This talks about salary ranges, where most business analysts work, where their locations are, what are they looking to do. So, I mean, it's just really kind of a nice way to get your arms around what are the trends? What are the trends in business analysis? That's always great. Also, IIBA has great resources. I do want to tout that. They have, if you're looking for a job, they have job resources. They also have great white papers and templates and tools and things like that you can use. So it really is an advantage to be actually a member to get some of these great things that they offer. Also, for anyone who is interested in going to Orlando, April 15th through 19th, is IIBA's big, huge annual conference. It is in Orlando, Florida, right across from Universal Studios. So maybe that might be enticing to you. And so just check it out. Go to BBC conferences, because BBC, it's not the British broadcasting that you want to do. But it is going to BBC conferences. You will see the IIBA conference scheduled, and you certainly can sign up for that. So hopefully we will be there. I will be speaking, so I would love to see you there. So check us out. We'll have a booth. Introduce yourself. I'd like to talk to you and answer any questions you have. Just upcoming certification classes, CBAP and CCBA are coming in March, April, June. We generally have them almost every other month, or not every other month, every month. ECBA is more every other month. We have one coming up in April and July. Same thing with CBDA. And then we still offer AAC, the Agile certification, but only on demand. So just kind of taking a look depending on what you are looking for. So let's talk about some of the core certifications. We'll be talking about specialty certifications in a bit. So we're going to start out with the 3 core certifications. And then if you are interested in a specialty certification, stay tuned because we will also cover those. So we have CBAP. That's been around since 2006. So these are business analysts who have worked over 5 years. You got a lot of experience, more seasoned business analyst. So if you are one and you think you have 7,500 hours in the past 10 years of work experience, that certification is for you. CCBA, kind of that mid-level certification, 2 to 3 years practical experience, 3,750 hours in the past 7 years. And ECBA, the newest, these are a good certification for anyone who's new to the profession. Students enrolled in, maybe you're enrolled in an academic program, graduates, people transitioning to the role, or a lot of times I'll have managers in my classes that they go, I have a lot of BAs reporting to me and I have no clue what they're supposed to be doing. So it's really a nice entree for them as well. So the BA-BAC experience, as you register your hours, there's a minimum 900, of course, in CBAP, and a minimum 902 instead of 4 knowledge areas, or 504 knowledge areas. And you don't need any experience for ECBA. So that's kind of nice. Keeps it simple. You do have to have professional development hours. That means you have to take a class before you can sit for the certification. It has to be instructor-led, and our certification courses help you fulfill those hours. So no worries there. 35 hours for CBAP, 21 for CCBA. You do need references. They only check your references if you are audited. And then they'll check them, but reference has to be somebody who's a manager, your manager who gives you your work performance, another CBAP. And you do have to sign a code of conduct that you will be a good BA. They do have application fees because you do have to put in all your hours, your professional development, your references, all that. So they do charge you $145 for that. And then the exam fees you can see here below. The first number is for a member. The second number is for a non-member. That's why it behooves you to take advantage of that 30% off discount, because then you automatically become a member and you can get it for the cheaper rate plus 30% off that. So it works actually kind of well. So I'm going to encourage you to do that. So what about the exams? The exams are a little bit different in each level. And one of the questions I get before I go into the exams is people go, well, do I have to get my ECBA first and then CCBA and CBAP? No, I say go for the one that you have the most skills in or the most hours. So if you only think you have 3,750 hours, then go for CCBA. If you go, wow, Susan, I've been kind of doing this even though my title isn't a BA, but I kind of been doing this stuff for a long time, over 10 years. Okay, so maybe you should go for a CBAP. You do not have to do all 3, which is nice. But they do have their focus on exam is a little bit different. So CBAP has a case study. So you read a case study, it's about 1.5 pages, you read through it, and then you have like 3 or 4 questions. So it might be just a plain question, might be a scenario question, but you do have to kind of read a little bit more, I'm sorry to say, for CBAP. They also intersperse in between the case studies. There might be like 3 or 4 case studies, and then the rest of the questions will be scenario-based questions. Multiple choice, though, which is great, A, B, C, or D. At least if you guess, you got a 25% chance of getting it right. 120 questions, you get 3.5 hours. So it's a longer exam, and you do have to study for it. CCBA, scenario-based questions, situation. You're a business analyst. In this situation, what would you do, or what would you suggest, or what technique would you use? And so they'll give you little baby scenarios, maybe probably 2-3 sentences long. And then certainly, again, multiple choice. They have 130 in 3 hours, just because you don't have to read a case study which takes time. So they give you a little bit more time in CBAP. ECBA is just competency-based, basically a knowledge-based exam. Now, just a warning, ECBA exam is changing. How it's changing, we don't know yet. We are a endorsed education provider with IIBA, one of their premier providers. We can't get anything out of them yet. They're still contemplating, but they do want to change the exam a little bit. Still multiple choice though, so whatever the exam comes out to be, it'll still probably be pretty much knowledge-based and competency-based. So there'll be questions, 4 choices, A, B, C, or D. But the nice thing is it's only 15, you get an hour to do that. So it is not a long exam. It's just to say, hey, do you know your stuff? Maybe knowing some of the terms, some of the techniques, things like that. So when we talked about having knowledge, there's like 900 900 hours in 4 knowledge areas. It's like, okay, that's great, Susan. What are you talking about? These are the knowledge areas. This is the IIBA's business analysis framework. Each one of these is called a knowledge area, which there are 6. So as you look at your experience, think about which bucket it might come in. So is it going to be in business analysis, planning, and monitoring, in which you're planning for your business analysis effort, not the project, just your business analysis effort? So thinking about what are your activities, what elicitation techniques are you going to do, how many stakeholders do you need to talk to, being able to do improvements. So how do I get better as a BA? Governance, who gets to decide what? So those are the things you kind of plan. And then you have to monitor it, of course, as you go forward in the project. Certainly elicitation and collaboration, you're eliciting from stakeholders or requirements, information maybe about figuring out what the problem is or the opportunity, what the existing system does, current state, maybe you're doing some current state analysis, future state. You elicit for everything. You elicit for a lot of things. Maybe you're creating a model and you're eliciting the model, or maybe prototype, or whatever you're doing. So we elicit all the time. And so why it points to this core group is the outer 3 are kind of a support bucket, if you will, because it's just buckets of things we need to do. Sometimes they might be concurrently. Once in a while, they're sequential, not very often, however. But these are kind of the support areas. We plan for everything. We elicit for everything. And we collaborate with stakeholders during the whole thing, because we need to talk to them and build their trust and get them to give us our requirements. And then in requirements lifecycle management, this is the care and feeding of requirements. How are you going to document them? How are you going to manage them? Things like that. Excuse me, I have to, little tickle in my throat. So that's what you're doing here. Strategy analysis, requirements analysis, and design definition and solution evaluation are those core. So strategy analysis is those pre-project work. So strategy analysis is that, okay, let's analyze the current state. Let's figure out the business need. Let's define the future state. How are we going to get from current state to future state? Figuring that out, making recommendations. Requirements analysis and design definition, excuse me, is taking those requirements, those elicited requirements, analyzing them, documenting them in whatever fashion, whether it's in a user story or a BRD, business requirements document. We'll do our models here. Maybe it's an ERD diagram, maybe it's a process map, whatever ones we decide to do. And then certainly look at the design. Are we going to build it? Are we going to buy it? Are we going to do some portion in between? And that's a lot during the project. And then solution evaluation is towards the end, or after the project has been, or the solution has been implemented. So solution evaluation is determining whether we got the value we thought we were going to get. Did we get that increase in productivity? Did we get that cost savings? Did we get more revenue? So here's a really big tip, as you document your work experience, get a copy of the BA-BOK. Use their terms, because if you use their terms, you should kind of fly through everything. If you don't, you start using project management terms, they're going to discount that and take it out of your hours, and you really don't want that. So take a look at this. If nothing else, go online, at least get an understanding of what's in there. So as you put your hours in, they have to be able to fill one of these buckets, or all of them actually, but making sure that you have the right terminology helps. Okay, exam blueprint. Okay, so as you look at these, you will note that they have numbers behind them. Those numbers signify the chapter in the BA-BOK. So this is chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 9, chapter 10, etc. You can see where in the ECBA exam, they do have a question, on business analysis. Maybe it's about the definition of business analysis, or the business analysis role or whatever. So there's 1 there. 2 to 3 on key concepts, again, terms. 2 to 3 on underlying competencies. There's a lot of underlying competencies. Competency questions aren't usually too hard. I suggest most people go through the competencies at a high level and just, understand it. It's certainly not rocket science. Techniques, though, are really critical, and there are 50, count them, 50 in the BA-BOG. You want to know all 50 because there's 8 to 9 questions in ECBA. So they could say, when would you want to use a focus group? Or, you need to talk to a stakeholder. What technique would you use? Or what model might you use here? What model would help you get this information? So you kind of need to understand all those techniques, which include models and diagrams. Then we have, and again, this is a core. Remember, we just went through this, the core knowledge areas. And you can see how many questions they have here. Now, if you're studying for ECBA, strategy analysis and solution evaluation doesn't have any. Why? Because generally strategy analysis is before project work, solution evaluation is towards the end or after project work, and most of the work for new business analysts come around requirements analysis and design. So they pulled questions. They used to have questions, but they pulled them out. Now, look at CCBA and CBAP. And this is actually a blueprint that IIBA created. So you'll see this right on their website. It looks like NA. This whole section looks like, oh, I don't have to read chapters 1 or 2 or 9 or 10. It's incorrect. NA doesn't mean that there's not questions, but they're incorporated into the knowledge areas. So you look at this number, like particularly requirements analysis and design definition, 42 questions, 36. That's just not from requirements analysis and design, but some of those are technique questions because they have lots of technique questions. Some of them might be underlying competency questions. So what they've done is they've incorporated the underlying competencies and the techniques into this list of questions, because when it's a case study, it could be from it kind of anywhere. So you can kind of get a feel for how many questions it might be, but it's more than just looking at the knowledge areas. So I know for a fact there's lots of technique questions that will be incorporated into these numbers. There will be a number of competencies, but again, I would say just read the competencies for comprehension and how they're looking at it. You shouldn't have too much problem. I probably wouldn't study there very much, but read it to get an understanding, because you might think of something differently than they do. And also just skim, chapters 1 and 2, just to get an idea of, oh, this is not how I usually use this term, or they have different terms for requirements. They have 5 levels of requirements, such as business, stakeholder, functional, non-functional, and implementation, transition requirements is what they call them. They used to be called implementation requirements. So, just to get an understanding of the terms, how they use them. So if you get that term in a question, you know what they're thinking about. So that would be a helpful tip. To help you even more, we have a handbook, Watermark Learning. Go to Watermark. IIBA has some too. I'm looking at this one already. So download all IIBA certification handbooks. Because they update them from time to time, and then it'll help tell you what to do in order to fulfill your application and get ready for your exam. Again, you need professional development hours. We talked about that. Work history, references, we talked about that. But go to watermarklearning.com. Under resources, under templates, you do have to sign in, but it's free. There is a Excel template there where you can put in all your work experience, and it will calculate for you, to make sure you have the number of hours, because you need that 7,500 hours. Well, do I have 7,500 hours? We usually suggest putting a little bit more as a buffer, but making sure you have those amount of hours, and that you have 900 in 4 of those knowledge areas if you're sitting for CCBA. So being able to to do that. This really helps. The other reason it helps is that when you start loading in all your experiences, and let's say the kids interrupt you or somebody calls from work or whatever while you're doing it, and you go, oh, I got to save this, I'll do it later. Then you forget what you put in. So it's better just to have everything ready, and then you can sit down in one sitting and enter everything into the system, and you can make sure you're not duplicating anything. Because if you're duplicating something you think it was in, or you think it was in and you didn't put it in, that could create a mess. And you want to make it as easy on yourself as possible. So take advantage of that template. Then of course you have to pay for the application. Again, if you have bought our 30% off bundle, we will give you a special code so that you get your 30% off your application. Log in your details into the BA development log. That's all your hours. Agree to the code of conduct, submit, and then you will receive an email to let you know whether, and really shortly after you put everything in, it's either approved or pending audit. Now, the thing about pending audit, don't get too nervous, because the pending audit could be two things. One, they might be questioning some of your, this seems more like project management, so they might be questioning some of your hours. But the other thing most likely is just that your number came up. It's kind of like if you've ever gone through the security system in an airport, you're just going along, nothing unusual, and you all of a sudden go through the scanning device and it goes, eh. It's just because your number came up. Sometimes it might be something that you had change in your pocket or something, but generally it's sometimes your number come up, you go, nope, you got to go there and get more detailed checking. So don't get too concerned. They will come back to you within 30 days and say, hey, here's what I need. And usually they'll tell you exactly what documentation you need. So make sure you keep that documentation around your projects. The exam, once you have to have your application approved first. Okay. Then once it's approved, then you can think about, figuring out when you wanted to do the exam and everything else. And of course you have to pay for it again. Again, if you have our 30% off bundle, 30% off the exam fee, always nice. So you go to IIBA, review the exam rules and system requirements. You do have to have a camera on whatever you're using because they have to see you, and you have to show the room and show you don't have anything on the table. And so you have to have clean desk, nothing around. If you have a glass of water, kind of like I do, it has to be clear, nothing in it, but they'll give you, the IIBA is kind of nice, and they give you all this information. Schedule the exam. Once you pay for the fee, you can schedule it, and kind of figure out when do you want to take it. We usually suggest taking it when you're most alert, because my downtime is about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm kind of like waning until I get my second win for the rest of the day. But it's always kind of the same area. It's like I would not want to do it in the afternoon because I'm not as alert. Probably do it really early in the morning. So then you schedule the exam. You can either do it in person only for CBAP and CCBA. You can go to a PSI testing center physically if there's one around you and sit for the exam. Some people like doing that just to get away from everything. Otherwise, all the exams you can just take in either the comforts of your own home or in your office. You just got to make sure that you are not interrupted, because if you get interrupted, the exam stops. So you got to find a place where there's no kids, no dogs, no cats, no colleagues coming in, no boss coming in. You really have to say, I am undisturbable during this point in time. So then you take the exam and yay, get certified. So prep tips for CBAP and CCBA, because they're such huge exams. Most of the time, according to our experience, and we've been teaching CBAP, since probably 2006, so almost 20 years. Generally, most students take about 100 hours on the average, at least 2 to 3 months. The exceptions to that, I've had a couple students who take a couple weeks off, and that's all they do is just, wade into the pool of the BA BOK. However, most people don't have that luxury, nor do they want to spend 2 weeks of their vacation. Good time if you're laid off, but otherwise it's a little bit difficult. So knowing that, put a plan together, study for an average about 100 hours generally. Read the BA-BOK at least twice. Go through it. I would say the first time kind of skim it, and then being able to go through it in more detail. We also have, Watermark has supplementary study materials. We have a study guide, which takes the BA-BOK and makes it live. Because the BA-BOK, I'm just going to say, is kind of dry. Bullet point, bullet point, bullet point. So it's really good sleeping material if you want to fall asleep, because you'll read a page and fall asleep at night. So it's, it's better than anything else you could take. But good stuff, just really dry. So our study guide we created to take that dry material and make it live. Well, what does this mean in your real world? So again, you can find all of these on our website, study tables, flashcards. You can make your own flashcards for that matter, just for terms. Now, unless you're in the ECBA, you're not going to be questioned about the terms, but you need to understand them. If you get a scenario or a case study and they use those terms, how are they thinking about that term? And then online practice questions are always helping. Study a chapter at a time. We have some practice drill questions. You automatically get them if you sit for our certification class, but you can also purchase it individually if you want to study on your own and just use our questions. And then you take the exam, yay. All right, for all of you who are into the specialty certifications, we have the first, and these are the 4 specialty certifications they have. So they have the Agile Analysis Certification, which came out in 2018, and then they came in with CBDA, which is the Certification in Business Data Analytics. We offer both of these first two. Came around in 2019, so fairly new. CCA, cybersecurity, came out in 2020, and CPOA is product ownership analysis, which these two we don't offer. CCA we don't offer because it was built in conjunction with IEEE Computer Society, and they have modules and courseware you can purchase online. So we didn't need to duplicate what they already had. And we have tons of certifications in Agile, whether it's a beginning Agile certification or more advanced certifications. So at this time, we decided not to add this. But these two, of course, anybody working in an Agile environment, there is a guidebook. Now, these are going to be different than the BA-BOK. They sometimes refer to some of the techniques in the BA-BOK, but they have their own guidebook. So you sometimes have to use both as you're studying. So the Agile extension has its own guide, scenario-based questions, just like CCBA, 85, 2 hours, so shorter. And you can see that the exam fees are all the same. You can also use your 30% off for these as well. CBDA is for anybody who works in data analytics or wants to be adding data analytics to their repertoire of skills. And it has a guidebook to business data analytics, again, scenario-based, just like CCBA, 75 questions, few, 10 less, and 2 hours to take that. And CCA, like I said, they came together and have their own learning modules and learning materials. Knowledge-based questions, 75, 90 minutes. And then this is for product owners or business analysts that are either acting as a product owner or supporting the product owner, or maybe even considering the path. And so it does have its own guidebook, knowledge-based questions, only 60, and you get 90 minutes to do that. So those are the specialty certifications. So for registering ECBA or specialty exams are pretty much the same. Get the appropriate handbook, and with ECBA, it's still the BA-BOK. Pay the exam fee, 30% off if the bundle. Agree to the Code of Ethical Conduct and Professional Standards and Terms and Conditions. Study for it. We usually say it doesn't, with these specialty exams, couple weeks. It's not going to be the 100 hours, 2 to 3 months. They're only, max 2-hour exams. you know, and they're not that difficult. They're just, they are scenario based, but they're fairly easy. So you don't need a lot of study time, depending on how much time you have. You know, if you've got to take the kids to sports or walk the dogs or whatever, you know, you might take a little bit more, but generally 2-3 weeks is probably all you need. Schedule your exam and get it certified. So tips: 20 hours average. Again, it depends on how much time. I mean, if you can do 10 hours every week, or maybe you can do 5, it kind of extends that. Read the appropriate guidebook, and you might have to still read some of the techniques in the BA because they kind of borrow from that a little bit too. Supplemental your study with study aids, and we'll talk about those. And again, get those online questions going for you, and then take the exam and pass. So, testing tips. 1, don't dwell on any hard question. Now, they say mark, and I used to do this, mark and skip the hard questions. So what happened is when I took my CBAP many years ago, it was still on paper in a great big conference room. And I think I got kind of nervous because it's like I just went blank. My mind went blank, and I looked at question number 1. I was like, I don't know this one. Question number 2. I think by the question 4, I finally started going, oh, I know this. And I marked, you know, 1, 2, and 3, and then I came back, and it's like, oh, geez, so why weren't you thinking? But, you know, I just kind of, you know, got a little nervous. So, but now what I do, because I have a lot of certifications, I used to just mark them and skip them, you know, because you can flag them. But, you know, what I decided to do is say, you know, I'm going to still read the scenario, still read all the answers, and I'm going to pick one. What do I think? Just my gut feel. Maybe it needs more thought, because then I pick something. If I run out of time, I've at least got a 25% chance of getting it right. If I don't, it's wrong. Right? So I kind of just, I'm going to go with my gut. I think it's this. When I come back though, I want to make sure. So I'll mark that, and then I'll come back at the end if I have time and go through just only the marked ones. Because if you just go next, it'll take you through all, you know, 50 questions, and you really don't want to do that. So just looking at the marked ones, and then I'll read it again, and it's like, okay, because I don't want to second guess myself, because sometimes I talk myself out of a right answer, right? You've probably done that too. So I read the question really carefully. What are they asking? I read all the answers, because sometimes those answers will help you determine what are they really asking, because sometimes they'll put stuff in there you don't even need to know, you know, just to make it a little scenario. And it's like, oh, that's not what they're really asking. They're really asking this as you look at the questions. So then I'll go back to those flag ones. I'll go, let me read the question again, making sure I know what they're looking for. All the answers. Okay, so most of the time I keep my first answer, because that was just my gut, my head, my unconscious self answering that. A couple times I'm going, oh, Susan, what were you thinking? And then I'll change it. But really try not to second guess yourself. I do a lot of exams, and sometimes they're in paper form, and I look and I can see where people, you know, crossed off the right answer to put a wrong answer. So I really have to ask myself, Susan, were you really wrong, or should you just leave it? Narrow down the options. You know, if you can get it down to 2, at least you got a 50-50. Yes, if you must. Again, we talked about don't changing the answer, and just watch the time a little bit. It's like, okay, I've got 50 questions. It's about halftime. I've got 30 answered. I'm doing pretty good, you know, or if I only had 20 answered and I've got halftime, it's like, oh, shoot, I got to go faster. So read the questions, all the answers, not go, oh, it's B, and then not know what C or D is, because D could be better. So I read all the answers, read the question again to make sure I got the semblance of the question, and then answer. Same thing with CCBA, AAC, and CBD, scenario questions. Read the answers, review, making sure you know what they understand. CBAP, a little bit more convoluted, because there is a case study. So you got to read a number of paragraphs, you know, it could be 3-4 paragraphs. Then they'll have a question about what was in the scenario. And then again, I read the question, read all the answers. I might have to go back to the case study. In most cases, I don't, but I skim the case study really fast, and then I'll read the question, all the answers. And if I can't figure it out, I'll go back to the case study and look. So lots of resources we have. CBAP resources, I talked about that great study guide. Everyone has loved it since it came out. They're going, oh my gosh, this finally makes sense because it's not so dry. Study tables gives you a big picture of how everything interacts together. Really nice. That was one of my favorite study tools as I was studying for the CBAP. Certainly online questions helped. And the flashcards I didn't really use. I kind of started making my own. You can make your own, or you can purchase them if you don't have time. Same thing with ECBA. We got the study tables instead of the study guide because that would be a little bit overwhelming. We have, just kind of how to talk BA. So this gives you kind of all kinds of terminology that you might need. AAC are Agile. We have flashcards, study tables, and online questions. And for CBA, we have online questions. So just thinking about that. Now, if you are certified, you got your certification, yay, you passed the exam. For CBAP and CCBA, I'm sorry to say you have 60 credits. They're called certifying development units, I believe, and every 3 years. And so what I do is I don't want to wait, because some people do this, kind of procrastinate, and it's 2 weeks before your certification is up and they go, oh crap, I got to get 60 CDUs. Now, they're not that hard. At the same time, I don't want that pressure because I've got a lot of other things on my plate most often. So what I do is I break them up every 3 years, 20, 20, 20. It just makes it a cleaner. I'll make sure I have 20 this year, 20 next year, 20 the following year, because I do not want to take that exam again. Because if you do not recertify, that certification goes away. You are no longer certified. Now, there's a retirement option. If you've been a CBAP for a while and you're at a certain age, you can retire and then you're a CBAP for life. But until you get there, you will have to constantly recertify. Now, if you take the AAC and CBDA, 20 every year, which is kind of a nuisance, I'm sorry to say. But I figured this way. I said, okay, I'm going to take a point in time on my calendar. If I was smart, I would register them constantly throughout the year, but I never take time to do that. So I usually take a couple points in the year and then say, and I keep them so that I can register them later. I keep the information, but I don't always do that consistently, but I do it like once a year. So again, I don't have to wait till 60 and then just put them in or try to find, what was that I went to again? Yeah. So usually can get credit hours from attending a class, going to a conference, webinars, reading books, volunteering for maybe a local chapter. I mean, there's just a lot of options. So check out the latest and greatest from IIBA.org on their recertification. They have a whole handbook on that too. The nice thing about ECBA, CCA, and CPOA, no recertification credits as of yet. They said they might change that, but right now you're good. Now, just in case you want to know how many other people are with you. Okay. So I kind of created this. I like looking at the trends, and you think about, okay, in 2020, CBAP, we had 10,000. Okay. And it came out in 2006. So that was kind of slow going. But in less than 4 years, it's almost doubled. And I think it's going to double and again, because I think people are finally realizing the value of certification. So, you look from July, 2020, of course, that was during COVID. So nobody else had anything better to do than study for CBAP, apparently. But that doubled almost everything. ECBA really is more like tripled. CCBA, not as popular, but that has doubled too. And then you can see that the Agile one is very popular. I mean, that more than doubled from 554 to 2,000. Same thing with CBDA. That's really, you can see it's picking up. And then CCA and way back in 2020, there wasn't even CPOA. That's fairly new. So back up to 880. And just some fun facts. This was taken from the 2022 Global State of Business Analysis. The 2023 just came out, so we haven't had time to update some of this material, but generally it's pretty much the same, that people would recommend certification. On the average, they make 25% more. A lot of times I know I work with organizations that say, gee, in order to move up the ladder or move to your next level, grade level in your job, you got to have your certification. So, you know, it gives you confidence, it gives the organization more confidence, you get salary increases, maybe a bump up, helps in your professional review, maybe it's on your list to do. And you usually get benefits pretty shortly. So that is a quick journey through IIBA certifications. Mariella, is there any questions in the chat that I need to answer before we let everybody go today?
Hey, Susan, I do not believe so, but I will give our audience a little bit of time to throw any last minute questions in if they have any. And if you guys need any more info on this topic, please do not be afraid to visit us at watermarklearning.com. If you missed out on any part of this session, we will be sharing this recording with all of you in an email after the webinar. So be on the lookout for that if you weren't able to attend the full session.
All right.
Other than that, it looks like we are all good and we are all well informed.
All right. Well, happy Friday, everyone. Good luck on your certification journey. Wishing you all the best. And happy March.
Absolutely. Happy March. And thank you so much for joining us today, everyone. Alrighty. Bye. We'll see you later.